Hello, this is Rogers Redding. I'm the National Coordinator of Football Officials, and I'd like to welcome you to this second video of the 2018 season that we prepared specifically for the media and the fans. Again, this time you're going to see a few plays from recent games. We've got a couple of really unusual plays on this video, so I hope you enjoy these. I hope you learn something. I hope you get something out of this. We've got a lot of good feedback already from the first video in this series, and I hope that you enjoy this one and can take something from it to learn about the game of college football. On this play, we have the potential for offensive pass interference, but because the ball was touched behind the line of scrimmage, there is no foul. Watch the receiver lined up to the right, to split into the right side of the formation. He runs his route across the middle along the line of scrimmage, and in fact is behind the line of scrimmage when he touches the ball. The back coming out of the backfield, coming from the other direction, throws a block, and that would be offensive pass interference had the ball been touched beyond the line. But because the ball was touched behind the line, there is no foul. So a good example of a potential for offensive pass interference, and whether or not there's a foul depends upon whether the ball was touched behind the line or beyond the line.
There is no foul for pass interference. The pass was caught behind the line. First down.
This punt play shows us an example of the rule for leaping the shield. The player on the defensive team, number 15, comes in and leaps and goes right over one of the players of the shield. If he'd gone in the gap, he would have been okay, but if he breaks the plane above the frame of the player in the shield, that's a foul for leaping. So this is a good example of that. And as I say, if he'd gone through the gap, he'd been okay, but because he leaps, and you can see this is a player safety issue because he lands and there's always a potential for a player landing on his head or on the back of his neck. And so that's why the rule is here as a protection for the leaper.
Foul, number 15 of the receiving team, leaping the shield. That's a 15-yard penalty from the previous spot. Automatic first down.
This is one of these tight plays at the Pylon, and I wanted you to see this because there are several things to talk about here. You can see that the receiver has his feet on the ground in the end zone. He reaches back across into the field of play to receive the pass, and the question is whether or not he has control of the ball before he hits the pylon. You can see that his leg touches the pylon as he's completing the process of the catch. And so the issue for the replay official and for the official on the field is, does he have control of the ball before he touches the pylon? Because once he touches the pylon, then he's out of bounds. And this goes to replay. It is confirmed as a catch, and so this is a completed pass. Now, there really is no issue about whether or not a touchdown is scored here because the ball never really comes close to the goal line. And the fact that his feet are in the end zone doesn't make any difference. The location of the feet is not important. It's the location of the ball with respect to the goal line as to whether or not we have a touchdown. But I wanted you to see this as an example of a really tight play around catch, no catch, and whether or not the player has control of the ball before he goes out of bounds. In this case, going out of bounds because he touches the pylon. Here's a kind of a wild play where a team is in punt formation back up near their own goal line, and the ball is snapped over the punter's head, and then we have a lot of things going on. The ball eventually winds up in the end zone, and the question always is whether or not it's a touchback or a safety because the ball goes in the end zone and then out of bounds. Now notice that the ball is snapped over the punter's head. He picks the ball up and runs with it. It looks like he may be trying to kick it, and he fumbles the ball. So the condition of the ball is a fumble, and in the scramble, it's forced back across the goal line and out of bounds. And the rule is that the team that fumbled the ball is responsible for it being in its own end zone unless there is a deliberate kick or a deliberate bat to force the ball into the end zone. Now here we have the ball accidentally touching the foot of one of the members of the receiving team and the ball going in the end zone. But by rule, that is not the reason the ball is in the end zone. The ball is in the end zone because of the fumble, and so the responsibility for it being there is with the fumbling team. And that's why this is a safety. Now, had the player on the receiving team deliberately kicked the ball into the end zone, that would have been different. That would have been a touchback. But because the responsibility lies with the fumbling team, the ball in the end zone and out of bounds, that is a safety.
On the field is a fumble that was accidentally kicked out of bounds. It went out of bounds in the end zone. Result of the play is a safety.
Here's another play where the ball is fumbled into the end zone. And whenever that happens, of course, there's lots of things to talk about. On this situation, the ball carrier fumbles the ball, it goes forward into the end zone, and then his teammate recovers the ball and then slides on out of bounds. Now notice that it's third down. That's real important here because if it had been fourth down, we would have had an entirely different situation. But because it's third down, this is okay as a touchdown because the ball is fumbled, recovered by a teammate of the fumbler in the end zone, and he recovers it in the end zone before he goes out of bounds. Two things to notice. First of all, if the ball had gone on out of bounds, in other words, if he had not recovered the ball and had control of it before he went out of bounds, this would have been a touchback. The second thing to notice is I mentioned this was third down and not fourth down. If it had been fourth down, it would not have been a touchdown. The ball would have come back to the spot of the fumble and belonged to the fumbling team at that spot. Because the rule around fourth down, the anticipation is the team might deliberately fumble it forward to try to gain some yardage and, let's say, make a first down. And so the rule is that when the ball is recovered on a fourth down fumble, if that recovery spot is in advance of the spot of the fumble, the ball comes back to the spot of the fumble. So this is correctly ruled as a touchdown because the ball was fumbled into the end zone, not on fourth down, and then recovered in the end zone by a teammate of the fumbler. Here's an interesting example of an illegal formation on the kickoff. The rules require that everybody on the kicking team be in a position no more than 5 yards from the ball when the ball is declared ready for play, and the exception is the player who kicks the ball, he can be more than 5 yards. Notice in this situation, and you can see it on the replay, where the person who is lined up to kick the ball is about 7 or 8 yards away from the ball, which would be okay if he actually kicked it. But they actually execute an onside kick where another player kicks the ball, and that makes it illegal because the formation must be such that the person that kicks the ball is the only one allowed to be more than 5 yards away. So I wanted to show this because it's very unusual and it's a good illustration of the specific rules about how the kicking team must be aligned on the kickoff.
The legal procedure on the kicking team. Someone other than a kicker kicked the ball, and the kicker was more than 5 yards from the face of the kick. 5-yard penalty, first down.
Here's a play that illustrates a new rule in 2018 regarding the clock when there's an instant replay review inside a minute of either half. First thing to notice is the clock. It is in the fourth quarter and it's inside a minute. So the rule I'm about to talk about will come into play here. The quarterback rolls out to pass. He is effectively sacked and it looks like he's tackled, but then he rolls over the player and is allowed to continue. He throws an incomplete pass and the play is over. But replay comes in and shows that, in fact, he was down rolling over the other player. His elbow hits the ground, which means that he should have been declared down there and the ball declared dead. In this situation, had the ball been declared dead then, had the ruling on the field been correct, the game clock would not have stopped because he was not beyond the line of the game, so there was no first down, so no reason to stop the clock. Under those circumstances, the game clock is reset to the time when the ball should have been declared dead, in this case, when his elbow hit the ground, and then 10 seconds is subtracted from that. Now, either team could avoid the 10-second runoff by calling a timeout. They don't do that in this case, but that is available to them. The philosophy behind the rule is something like this. Because the game clock would not have stopped if the play had been correctly officiated on the field, then the idea is that there would be some time involved in getting set up for the next play, getting the down box reset, getting the officials in position, those kinds of things. And so the theory is that subtracting 10 seconds is a reasonable way of adjusting the clock to be fair to both teams. But I wanted you to see this as an illustration of the rule that involves the clock late in the game, late in a half, when there is an instant replay review.
Second runoff.
Clock operator, please reset the game clock to 23 seconds.
Well, here's the gimmick play of the season so far, and I wanted you to see this because there's been some buzz around this play and some questions about whether or not the play is legal. This is a punt, and the punt receiver catches the ball and then pretends that he has made a fair catch. He sort of stands around a few seconds and then starts running again. Also, the officials correctly did not blow their whistles because there's no reason to declare the ball dead at this point. Notice that he does not make any waving signal at all. That's the key point of the play. If he had made any waving signal and then caught the ball would have been immediately dead. But he doesn't do that. He just catches the ball, but then sort of stands there and for a couple of seconds, takes a few steps, and the kicking team clearly believes he's made a fair catch because they start trotting off the field. He sees that nobody's going to tackle him, so he starts running and in fact returns the ball for a touchdown. This is perfectly legal. This player has done nothing to make the ball dead. Now, if he had tossed the ball to the official or if he laid the ball on the ground and trotted off, then that would have been him declaring that he's given up and that the play is over. But he doesn't do that. He does a little deception, and there's nothing wrong with that. Deception is a part of the game. I mean, quarterbacks fake handoffs and fake passes. It's illegal to use a substitution process to deceive the opponent. But in terms of making a fake during the play, that's just part of the game. Now, this is a copycat business, and so coaches and players that see that this has been successful may want to try this. They may want to watch for this in the coming weeks to see whether or not this is repeated. The player who does this also puts himself in a vulnerable position because since he's not made a fair catch signal, he can be tackled immediately upon catching the ball. And so there is some risk involved in a player doing this, but I just wanted you to see the play because it is one that is unusual, it's got a lot of chatter, and as it is constructed here, it is a legal play. Quite often, the kicking game, that is kickoffs and punts, can sometimes give us some adventure, and here's a situation where a player muffs the kickoff and the ball goes into the end zone and he goes back and recovers it. I put this on here because the question that sometimes arises, what's the difference between a safety and a touchback when the ball goes into the end zone like this? The rule is that if the ball goes into the end zone under these circumstances, it is because of the kick. And so the kicking team is responsible for the ball having gone in the end zone. Even though this receiving team player muffs it in the field of play. He muffs the ball, it goes back in the end zone, but by rule, that is not the reason the ball is in the end zone. The reason the ball is in the end zone is because of the kick. And since the kicking team is responsible for the ball being in the end zone, when he recovers it and downs it back there, the ball is dead when he does so, and it's going to be a touchback. So he's going to get the ball at the 25-yard line. Sometimes players think they have to try to get the ball out of there. They don't know the rule about whether or not this is a safety or touchback, and so sometimes they can put themselves in harm's way by, let's say, fumbling when they're tackled in the end zone when they really didn't need to try to get the ball out of there. He doesn't try to get the ball out, and so this is a touchback. It's a touchback because the ball went into the end zone because of the kick. Now, if he'd been in the field of play and batted the ball back into his own end zone or turned around and kicked the ball back into his own end zone, then that would have been his responsibility, and recovering it in the end zone would have been a safety. But here it's a touchback because the impetus for the ball being in the end zone is because of the kick. Well, that's it for this week. I hope you've enjoyed these, and I hope you got something from them. If you're traveling to a game this week, if you're working as a media member, or if you're going as a fan, I certainly wish you safe travels. And if you have a favorite team, I hope you win. Have a great week.